The sorting happens at dawn, while smoke still rises from the city walls. Mongol officers move through rows of captured women with the efficiency of merchants evaluating silk. They're looking for specific qualities, and they've done this so many times they can assess a woman's value in seconds. Group 1. Ages 14-25, unblemished skin, clear eyes. These will travel east to Karakoram, the Mongol capital, where they'll enter the Khan's breeding system. Group 2, ages 25-40, strong builds, work-worn hands. These stay local as field laborers until their bodies fail. Group 3, older women, the sick, the resistant, quick deaths. Their bodies are already being dragged toward mass graves. A Chinese merchant's wife tries to run. She makes it 3 steps before an arrow drops her. No one else moves. They've learned. The Mongols have refined human trafficking into industrial efficiency. By noon, 2,000 women will be categorized, marked, and assigned their fates. By sunset, they'll begin journeys to destinations they can't imagine, into purposes that will destroy everything they once were. This isn't a story about one woman, it's about hundreds of thousands, processed through the most sophisticated system of female exploitation the medieval world had ever seen. Before we descend into the organized horror of Mongol conquest, if you're interested in the dark truths history textbooks, hit that like button and subscribe. Comment below where you're watching from. It's incredible how we're connected across the world by our shared need to understand how civilizations systematically destroyed the women they conquered. Khwarezm, February 1220. The siege has lasted 5 months. Inside the city walls, 200,000 people wait for the inevitable. Sultan Mohammed has already fled, abandoning his capital, his army, and every woman who trusted his protection. When the walls finally break, the Mongol forces pour through like water through a cracked dam. The killing is systematic. Mongol officers have clear orders about who dies immediately and who has value worth preserving. Adult men of fighting age, executed where they stand. Their resistance is over. Boys under 12, separated for training as future Mongol soldiers. Their identities will be erased, replaced with Mongol names and loyalties. But the women face something different entirely. Princess Turkan Khatun spent her last free morning destroying documents, financial records, correspondence with other kingdoms, anything that might help the conquerors govern her people. She's 24 years old, daughter of one sultan, wife to another. She speaks Persian, Arabic, Turkish, and Mongolian, the last learned specifically for this moment she hoped would never come. The Mongols had been approaching for months, and she'd spent that time preparing, though nothing could truly prepare anyone for what was about to happen. The palace falls last. Turkan watches from the throne room as Mongol warriors execute her husband. They make it slow, ensuring she witnesses every moment. This isn't just murder, it's a lesson. Resistance ends in death. Cooperation might mean survival, though survival itself becomes questionable when you understand what survival entails. The Mongol general, who enters the throne room after her husband's body stops twitching, looks at Turkan with the expression of someone evaluating valuable property. He speaks in accented Persian, telling her she'll be taken to the selection area with the other noble women. The way he says selection makes it clear this isn't a choice she'll participate in. It's a categorization that's already been decided. By evening, 3,000 women from Khwarezm's noble and merchant families stand in the central square. The city still burns around them. Bodies of fathers, husbands, and sons line the streets. The Mongol officers begin their work, separating women into groups with the practiced efficiency of people who've done this dozens of times before. Turkan finds herself in Group 1, beautiful, young, educated, high-value merchandise destined for the Khan's personal collection. The Mongol record-keeping system for captured women rivals their military logistics in its thoroughness. Each woman receives a number painted on her shoulder with ink that won't wash off for months. The number isn't random, it's part of a tracking system that allows Mongols to maintain accurate inventories of human property across thousands of miles. Turkan becomes 247. The officer who paints the number on her bare shoulder does so with the same care a merchant would use marking expensive fabric. She is valuable, and damage to valuable property means loss of profit. The number is accompanied by a symbol indicating her origin city, her age category, and her designated destination. A complete stranger looking at Turkan's marked shoulder can immediately understand she's from Khwarezm, in the prime age group and destined for Karakoram. The other women in Group 1 receive similar treatment. A Persian governor's wife becomes 251. A wealthy merchant's daughter becomes 263. A court musician becomes 279. Their names don't matter anymore. They exist now as inventory, as assets being transferred from conquered territory to Mongol holdings. The systematic erasure of identity begins with these numbers painted on skin, but the marking system serves another purpose beyond inventory. It creates psychological control. Every time a woman sees the number on her shoulder, while washing, while dressing, while being examined by buyers in slave markets, she's reminded she's property. The number becomes a permanent psychological brand that outlasts the physical ink. Women who eventually wash off the painted numbers still feel them there, still think of themselves by those designations. The record keepers maintain ledgers documenting every numbered woman, scribes using Mongolian script to note the woman's number, her origin, her physical characteristics, her skills if any are apparent. These documents travel with the women, ensuring that accountability follows them through the entire system. If a woman dies in transit, someone must explain why valuable property was lost. If she arrives damaged, someone faces consequences for reducing her value. The system also prevents escape, at least psychologically. A woman with a number on her shoulder can be identified anywhere in Mongol-controlled territory. She can't blend into populations because the number marks her as escaped property. Even after the ink fades, the psychological weight remains. She's been categorized, valued, and assigned. The mark on her shoulder might fade, but the mark on her identity never does. The holding area, where Group 1 women spend their first night of captivity, is a warehouse that yesterday stored grain. Now it stores women. 300 of them crowded into a space designed for maybe 100. There's no bedding, no privacy, no sanitation beyond buckets in the corners. The Mongols provide minimal food, just enough to maintain health, not enough to provide comfort. Turkan finds herself pressed against a wall between a Chinese silk merchant's wife and a Turkic noblewoman. None of them speak the same native language fluently, but they share enough Persian to communicate in whispers. The Chinese woman's name was Mei. She uses past tense because she knows names don't matter anymore. The Turkic woman refuses to speak her name at all, as if by not saying it she can maintain some fragment of who she was before today. The night brings different horrors. Mongol officers enter the warehouse in groups of 3 or 4. They walk through the crowded women with torches, examining faces, occasionally pulling someone out. The women who are pulled out return hours later, if they return at all. Some come back with blank expressions, moving mechanically to find space on the warehouse floor. Others don't come back until morning, and when they do, they're different in ways that don't require explanation. Turkan isn't selected that first night. She watches it happen to others and understands this is just the beginning of a pattern that will continue throughout the journey to wherever they're being taken. The officers aren't being cruel in any personal sense. They're simply using property they own. This is what ownership means in the Mongol system. Access without restriction, use without consequence. The Chinese woman, Mei, is selected on the second night. When she returns hours later, she sits down next to Turkan and speaks in a voice that sounds like it's coming from very far away. She describes what happened with clinical detachment, as if it happened to someone else. Turkan realizes this dissociation is a survival mechanism. Mei is separating herself from her body, treating what happens to it as something that happens to another person entirely. It's the only way to maintain sanity in circumstances designed to destroy it. By the third day, the women in the warehouse have developed an informal hierarchy based entirely on what they can offer each other for survival. Women who speak multiple languages become translators, facilitating communication across the ethnic and linguistic divisions. Women with medical knowledge, however limited, treat injuries and illnesses with whatever materials they can scavenge. Women who can sing or tell stories provide psychological relief, offering moments of humanity in an environment designed to strip it away. On the fourth morning, the Mongol officers arrive with a new purpose. They're separating Group 1 further, creating subdivisions within the already valuable category. The most beautiful women, determined by Mongol aesthetic preferences, will form what the captives start calling the beauty line. These women face a specific fate, different from the others in Group 1. The selection criteria are precise and culturally specific. Mongols prefer women with lighter skin, which they associate with nobility and indoor living. They value hair that's long and black, eyes that are large and expressive, bodies that show health without being overly thin or heavy. They're looking for what they call luxury quality, women who can be presented as gifts to allies, as diplomatic tokens to seal alliances, as ultimate prizes for generals who've distinguished themselves in battle. Turkan makes the beauty line. Her mixed Persian and Turkic heritage has given her features that Mongols find exotic and appealing. Her education, visible in her bearing and speech, adds value. She's not just beautiful, she's beautiful and useful. This combination makes her especially valuable and especially doomed to a fate that other women in Group 1 might avoid. The beauty line contains 40 women from the original 300. They're moved to a separate warehouse that's slightly cleaner, slightly less crowded. The improved conditions aren't kindness, they're product maintenance. You don't keep your most valuable merchandise in conditions that might damage it. The women in the beauty line receive better food, access to washing facilities, even basic cosmetics. They're being prepared for presentation, and presentation requires preparation. An older Mongol woman arrives on the 5th day. She's a former captive herself, taken decades ago from a Chinese city whose name no longer matters. She's survived by becoming useful to her captors, and now she serves as a trainer, teaching new captives how to present themselves according to Mongol preferences. Her lessons are delivered in Chinese accented Persian, and they're brutally practical. She teaches them how to arrange their hair in styles that Mongol nobility favor, how to apply the minimal cosmetics they'll be given in ways that enhance features Mongols value, how to stand, how to walk, how to lower their eyes in the specific manner that indicates submission without servility. Most importantly, she teaches them how to disconnect mentally from what's happening to their bodies, the dissociation technique that May had instinctively discovered. This trainer has formalized it into a teaching method, passing survival skills from one generation of captives to the next. The Mongol economic system around captured women operates with the precision of any other trade good. Officers maintain detailed records of acquisition costs, how many soldiers were lost, taking the city, how much time was invested in the siege versus expected return on investment. Women like Turkan in the beauty line represent high-value assets that justify significant transportation and maintenance costs. A Mongol merchant explains the mathematics to a curious Chinese translator who's been hired to help process the captives. Each woman in Group 1 costs approximately 15 silver coins to acquire. When you calculate the military expenses, transportation to Karakoram costs another 8 coins per woman, food, guards, maintenance of health. So the baseline investment per Group 1 woman is 23 silver coins before she ever reaches market. In Karakoram's slave markets, a healthy Group 1 woman from a conquered Persian city brings 60 silver coins minimum. A woman in the beauty line brings 100 coins, sometimes 150, if she has unusual features or demonstrated skills. A woman like Turkan, who speaks multiple languages and comes from royal lineage, might bring 200 coins to the right buyer. The profit margins are substantial enough that the Mongol leadership allocates significant military resources to the systematic capture and transport of women. But the economics extend beyond simple sale prices. Women who enter the Khan's personal collection don't get sold. They generate value differently. They produce children who become part of the Mongol nobility, their mixed heritage useful for governing conquered territories. They serve as gifts to allies, strengthening political relationships more effectively than gold. They provide domestic labor that frees Mongol women from tasks, allowing those women to participate more fully in the economic and social life of Mongol society. The systematic exploitation is economically rational from a Mongol perspective. Every captured city provides not just immediate loot, but ongoing revenue through the women who can be extracted and monetized. The Mongol expansion strategy explicitly factors in this human resource acquisition. When planning military campaigns, generals calculate expected returns partly based on the estimated number and quality of women they'll capture. Turkan and the other women in the beauty line exist as line items in economic ledgers, their value calculated with the same precision as horses, silk, or precious metals. They're appreciating assets if maintained properly, depreciating assets if damaged. The Mongol system treats them as renewable resources. Their reproductive capacity means even a single captured woman can generate multiple additional assets over time through children who inherit slave status from their mothers. After 2 weeks in Khwarezm, the Mongol forces prepare to move to their next target. The captured women begin the first leg of their journey toward Karakoram, though most won't make it that far. The first trade happens at a way station 200 miles east, where Mongol officers meet with merchants who've traveled from Samarkand specifically to acquire Group 1 women before they reach the capital. These merchants specialize in regional redistribution. They buy women from military captors and resell them to local Mongol administrators, wealthy collaborators, or traders heading to other markets. It's more profitable for military officers to sell women in bulk to these middlemen than to transport them all the way to Karakoram. Only the highest value women, the beauty line, continue to the capital. The rest get traded here. Turkan watches as 250 women from Group 1 are lined up for inspection by 5 merchant delegations. The scene resembles any other commodity trade, with buyers examining merchandise, negotiating prices, and arranging transport. Women are examined for health markers: clear eyes, strong teeth, no visible injuries or illnesses. Buyers check hands for signs of useful skills, ask questions in multiple languages to test education levels, assess personality through brief interactions designed to reveal whether a woman will be compliant or resistant. A Chinese merchant buys 60 women, planning to move them west along the Silk Road to markets in Persia and eventually to Arab territories, where East Asian features command premium prices. A Mongol administrator buys 80 women to distribute among his officers as rewards for successful campaigns. Local collaborator, a Persian who's thrown his loyalty to the Mongols in exchange for personal profit, buys 40 women to resell in regional markets. The transactions are documented with the same careful record-keeping that characterizes all Mongol trade. Scribes note which numbered women went to which buyers, the prices paid, the destinations intended. This documentation serves multiple purposes. It maintains accountability, prevents disputes over ownership, and provides data for calculating the profitability of future campaigns. Turkan and 39 other beauty line women watch the trade from a separate area. They're not for sale here. Their value is too high to waste on regional markets. They're destined for Karakoram, where they'll enter the Khan's selection process. Some will become his personal property. Others will be gifted to generals, foreign dignitaries, or kept as strategic reserves for future diplomatic needs. But all of them will travel the remaining 2,000 miles to the capital, their value too significant to risk in intermediate sales. The Mongol approach to captured women isn't just about immediate exploitation. It's about long-term genetic and cultural absorption of conquered peoples. The breeding doctrine, as it becomes known to the women who experience it, treats reproduction as a tool of empire building more deliberate than any military strategy. The doctrine is simple. Children of Mongol fathers and conquered mothers become Mongol regardless of the mother's origin. This isn't just cultural, it's legally codified. A child born to a Mongol man and a Persian slave woman is Mongol, with all the rights and status that implies. But a child born to a Mongol woman and a conquered man is considered conquered, with slave status inherited through the mother. This asymmetric inheritance system encourages Mongol men to father children with captured women. Each child represents expansion of the Mongol people, dilution of conquered ethnic groups, and creation of mixed heritage individuals who owe loyalty to the empire that gave them status. The system turns women's bodies into tools of demographic conquest that operates across generations. Turkan learns about the breeding doctrine from a Uyghur woman who's been in the Mongol system for 5 years. This woman, whose name has been replaced by a Mongol designation, has birthed 3 children to 2 different Mongol fathers. The children have been taken to be raised in Mongol households, learning Mongolian, worshipping Mongol gods, trained in Mongol military and social customs. She'll never see them again, but they're Mongol now, their mother's Persian heritage reduced to a footnote in family histories. The doctrine explicitly encourages this reproduction. Mongol men receive tax incentives for children born to conquered women. Women who produce multiple healthy children gain improved living conditions and reduced labor requirements. The system rewards reproduction while maintaining the power imbalance. Fathers have all rights, mothers remain slaves, children belong to the empire. But the breeding doctrine also creates psychological weapons. Women who have children in the system become invested in the system's continuation. They can't resist or escape without abandoning children. They can't teach their children to resist without endangering them. The children themselves become chains binding mothers to acceptance of their captivity. Some women refuse to participate, terminating pregnancies through desperate measures, despite the risks. Others embrace it as the only path to slightly better conditions and the hope that their children at least won't suffer as slaves. The Mongol system doesn't care which choice women make as long as enough children are produced to achieve the demographic goals. Individual women are replaceable. The breeding doctrine itself is what matters. The journey from Khwarezm to Karakoram traverses 2,500 miles of the Silk Road, through deserts, mountains, and steppes. The 40 Beauty Line women travel in a convoy with 200 soldiers, 30 merchants, and hundreds of horses carrying trade goods. Their simultaneously precious cargo and disposable property, valuable enough to guard carefully, but not so valuable that losses can't be absorbed. The convoy moves 15 miles per day on average, though terrain and weather create significant variation. In the deserts south of the Aral Sea, progress slows to 8 miles per day as the caravan navigates sand and extreme heat. In the mountain passes of the Tian Shan Range, progress sometimes stops entirely as blizzards make travel impossible. The women travel on foot, chained in groups of 5. This arrangement prevents individual escapes while allowing enough mobility for daily travel. They're given minimal food, enough to maintain health, but not enough to provide energy for resistance. Water is rationed carefully, with priority given to soldiers and horses. The women receive water after the animals have drunk, sometimes receiving only the muddy dregs of streams that caravans have already polluted. At night, they're housed in whatever structures are available. Caravans raise when the convoy passes through trading towns, tents in the open desert, crude shelters in mountain valleys. The accommodations are never private or secure. Guards rotate constantly, and the women understand that their captivity includes unlimited access by anyone in the convoy who outranks them, which is everyone. Turkan develops a strategy for psychological survival during the journey. She focuses on learning Mongolian language in greater depth, memorizing vocabulary from conversations she overhears. Language skill is valuable, and value means survival. She helps other women with translations, creating social bonds that provide minimal comfort. She observes the Mongol soldiers and merchants carefully, learning their hierarchies and power dynamics, understanding which men are dangerous and which might be marginally safer. The journey claims lives, despite the Mongols' economic interest in preserving their valuable cargo. 2 women die from dysentery in the deserts, their bodies left beside the trail with minimal ceremony. 1 woman dies from infected injuries after a beating, her resistance to a soldier's demands met with violence that escalated beyond what her body could survive. 3 women disappear during the mountain passages, whether through escape attempts, falls, or murder. No one investigates. The convoy's records note the losses as acceptable wastage within projected parameters. Halfway through the journey, the convoy stops at Samarkand for resupply and rest. Samarkand has become a major hub in the Mongol trade network, and its slave market operates daily, processing hundreds of captured women per week from territories across Central Asia, Persia, and increasingly from northern China as Mongol campaigns expand eastward. The market occupies a large square near the city center. Wooden platforms allow buyers to inspect merchandise. Holding pens can accommodate 500 women at a time. The infrastructure includes washing facilities where women are cleaned before sale, medical inspection areas where buyers can verify health, and administrative buildings where sales are recorded and documented. The beauty line women aren't for sale here, but their convoy stops for 3 days, and the Mongol officers take the opportunity to conduct other business. Turkan and the others are housed in the holding pens, giving them their first direct observation of how the market operates. They watch hundreds of women processed, stripped, inspected, categorized, sold with the efficiency of any other commodity trade. The buyers represent diverse interests and destinations. Arab merchants seek light-skinned women with Persian or Central Asian features for markets in Baghdad, Damascus, and Cairo. Chinese traders want women with skills, literacy, medical knowledge, musical ability for wealthy households in cities that are increasingly falling under Mongol control. Mongol officials acquire women for administrative purposes, distributing them to garrison commanders, provincial governors, and military units as rewards and incentives. The market has developed specialized categories based on observed demand patterns. Luxury quality, women, beautiful, young, educated, command prices of 100 minutes 200 silver coins. Household quality, healthy, strong, capable of domestic labor, bring 40-80 coins. Field quality, suitable for agricultural work, sell for 15-30 coins. Women who are pregnant, injured, or showing signs of illness are sold at deep discounts to buyers willing to take risks. One scene captures Turkan's attention with disturbing intensity. A woman approximately 30 years old is brought to the auction platform. She's educated, speaks 4 languages, can read and write in 3 scripts, has managed household accounts for a wealthy merchant family. The auctioneer emphasizes these skills, and bidding reaches 150 silver coins. But the woman is also 8 months pregnant, her belly prominent even under the loose clothing she's given to wear. The buyer who wins the auction pays the 150 coins, knowing he's purchasing 2 slaves, the woman and the child she'll deliver in weeks. The economics are favorable. He'll recover his investment quickly if both survive. Despite the systematic control, captured women develop informal resistance networks. These operate beneath the surface of compliance, invisible to captors who see only obedience. The networks serve multiple purposes, sharing survival information, maintaining cultural identities, and occasionally enabling escapes, though successful escapes are rare enough to be legendary. Turkan is recruited into a network by an older Persian woman who's been in the Mongol system for 2 years. This woman, captured during the earlier campaign against the Khwarezmian Empire, has survived by appearing useful while quietly helping other captives when possible. She teaches Turkan the informal signals women use to communicate, hand gestures that mean guard approaching, eye movements that indicate not safe to talk, body language that conveys I have information. The networks share crucial survival information: which officers are most dangerous, which merchants are marginally more humane, which buyers in various markets offer slightly better conditions. They pass along news about escaped women, most recaptured quickly, but a few who've managed to disappear into populations far enough from Mongol control. These escape stories, mostly failures but occasionally successes, provide psychological sustenance. The networks also maintain cultural practices that the Mongol system tries to erase. Persian women whisper poetry from Rumi during rare moments of privacy. Chinese women teach each other characters, scratching them in dirt when guards aren't watching. Arab women pray together in ways that appear like casual conversation to observing Mongols. These tiny acts of preservation matter more than their scale suggests. Their assertions that the women haven't been completely absorbed into the category of property. One network activity is more dangerous: maintaining records of women's original names and origins. The Mongols number and categorize, but the networks remember names. They pass along information about who came from which city, who had which family, who was married to whom. This oral archive preserves identities that the Mongol system deliberately erases. If a woman dies, others remember her name and try to pass it along to anyone who eventually returns to her homeland. The networks occasionally coordinate more active resistance. At One-Way Station, a group of 20 women coordinate a mass poisoning attempt against their guards using local plants they've identified as toxic. The attempt fails, only 3 guards become seriously ill, not enough to create escape opportunities. The women involved are executed immediately as examples, but the attempt itself becomes part of network folklore, proof that resistance remains possible even in circumstances designed to make it impossible. Within the beauty line group, hierarchies develop based on subtle distinctions that determine slightly different fates. The 40 women aren't equally valuable. Factors like specific physical features, demonstrated skills, language abilities, and even personality traits create gradations that influence their ultimate assignments. Turkan occupies a high position in this hierarchy. Her royal lineage, multiple languages, and education mark her as particularly valuable. Officers treat her with marginally more consideration, not kindness, but the care you'd show to particularly expensive property. She receives slightly larger food portions, slightly cleaner clothing, marginally better sleeping positions in crowded spaces. These tiny advantages create guilt that she tries to push down. Survival requires accepting advantages, even when others suffer more. At the bottom of the beauty line hierarchy are women whose initial categorization seems increasingly questionable as the journey progresses. One Chinese woman has developed a persistent cough that won't heal in the harsh travel conditions. Her value declines daily as her health deteriorates. A Persian woman suffered facial injuries during her initial capture, injuries that are healing badly, leaving scars that reduce her aesthetic value. Both women understand they're sinking toward recategorization, potentially being sold at the next market rather than continuing to Karakoram. The hierarchies create psychological complexity. Women at the top of the beauty line hierarchy have better conditions, but face destinations that might be worse. Personal ownership by the most powerful Mongols means intense focus and control. Women at the bottom face immediate hardship, but might end up in less scrutinized positions where small freedoms become possible. Neither situation is good, but the comparison creates moral ambiguities. Turkan finds herself acting as an informal leader, partly because of her language skills and partly because of her royal background. Other women look to her for decisions about minor issues, how to divide scarce resources, who gets the slightly warmer sleeping position, how to interact with guards. She never sought this role and often wishes someone else would take it, but leadership emerges from necessity rather than choice. The hierarchies also determine access to the resistance networks. Women at the top, like Turkin, receive more information because they're valuable enough that hurting them brings consequences. Women at the bottom are more vulnerable. Harming them brings less response, so networks protect them through information and collective support when possible. The Tian Shan Mountains present the journey's greatest physical challenge. The convoy must cross passes above 10,000 feet elevation, traveling through snow in late autumn conditions that kill unprepared travelers. For the beauty line women, wearing inadequate clothing and weakened by months of captivity, the mountains become a direct survival test. The first woman dies on the third day in the mountains. She's the Chinese woman with the persistent cough, and the thin air at high altitude makes breathing impossible. She collapses during an uphill march and never gets up. The Mongol officers debate briefly whether to wait for her recovery, but the weather is deteriorating and schedule matters. They leave her body beside the trail, unmarked and unnamed. The number 267 that had defined her for months means nothing now. The cold kills more efficiently than obvious violence. Night temperatures drop below freezing, and the women have only thin blankets for warmth. They sleep pressed together for shared body heat. But even this isn't enough for some. Each morning brings the discovery of women who haven't survived the night, their bodies cold and stiff, their faces peaceful in ways that living faces rarely are anymore. The surviving women envy these deaths briefly, though survival instinct returns with daylight. Turkin develops frostbite on 3 toes, despite her best efforts to protect her feet. The injury isn't severe enough to threaten her life or primary value, but it's painful and permanent. She'll carry the damage forever as a physical memory of these mountains, even if she somehow survives to freedom. Other women develop worse injuries. One loses 2 fingers to frostbite, another suffers snow blindness from days of travel across white landscapes without protection. The Persian woman with facial scars dies during a blizzard that halts the convoy for 2 days. Whether she freezes or simply gives up isn't clear. Her body is found curled in a position that suggests she went to sleep and chose not to wake up. The Mongols don't waste energy determining cause of death. They note the loss in their records, adjust the expected profit calculations, and continue when weather permits. By the time the convoy descends the eastern slopes of the mountains, 8 women from the original beauty line of 40 are dead. The survivors are harder than they were, which is both adaptation and loss. Hardness means survival, but costs something essential. Turkin realizes she's stopped learning the names of new women she meets. Names mean connections, and connections mean pain when those people die. It's easier to think of people as numbers, as the Mongols do. She hates this change in herself, but can't stop it. The Mongol capital of Karakorum appears across the steppe like a fever dream. After 4 months and 2,500 miles, the 32 surviving beauty line women see their destination. It's smaller than many cities they've come from, perhaps 30,000 people, but it's the beating heart of an empire that spans from Korea to Eastern Europe. The city reflects Mongol priorities, military organization, trade facilitation, and centralized control. The convoy bypasses the city proper and heads to a compound on the southern outskirts. This is the processing facility for high-value captives, where women like Turkan undergo final preparation before entering the Khan's selection process. The compound includes washing facilities, medical inspection buildings, dormitories, and training areas. It's simultaneously nicer than anything the women have experienced since capture, and more obviously a factory for processing human beings. The first day in Karakoram involves cleaning. The women are given hot water, luxury they haven't experienced in months, and harsh soap. They're instructed to wash thoroughly, including hair. It's not kindness, but preparation for presentation. They're being made suitable for examination by the highest level of Mongol nobility. Stains, scars, and damage from the journey are assessed by medical staff who note which women have maintained their value and which have depreciated. Turkan's frostbite damage is documented but deemed acceptable. It doesn't affect her primary value categories. Other women face worse assessments. One whose facial injuries have healed poorly is recategorized. She'll be sold in local markets rather than presented to the Khan. The sudden demotion is devastating. She's traveled 2,500 miles believing she was destined for the Khan's household, and now she learns she wasn't valuable enough to last the complete journey. The surviving 31 beauty line women are given new clothing, simple but clean silk robes in blue and white, the colors indicating their status as unclaimed property awaiting assignment. They're housed in a dormitory that's cleaner and more comfortable than anything they've experienced since capture. The improvement is jarring. It's easier to maintain resistance when conditions are uniformly horrible. Slightly better circumstances create psychological confusion. Is this the beginning of something less awful, or just more effective control? An older Mongol woman arrives to begin their training for the selection process. She's the most senior trainer in the capital's system, and her presence indicates the importance of this particular group of captives. She speaks Persian with perfect fluency. She's originally from Bukhara, captured 20 years ago when the Mongols first pushed into Central Asia. She's survived by becoming indispensable, and now she teaches others how to survive by becoming useful. The selection process happens in a large hall within the government complex. Genghis Khan's successor, Ogedei Khan, doesn't personally inspect every captured woman brought to Karakoram. That would be impossible given the volume. Instead, the selection operates through a tiered system where high-ranking officials make preliminary evaluations before the Khan sees only the most exceptional cases. The 31 surviving beauty line women are first evaluated by 3 senior wives from the Khan's household. These women hold enormous power in the selection process. They're looking for specific qualities, not just beauty, but women who won't disrupt existing household hierarchies, who show intelligence but not cunning, who possess skills useful to the imperial household. They ask questions in multiple languages, testing education levels and mental acuity. Turkan is interviewed by Turgan, one of Ugedei's principal wives. Turgan is herself a former captive, taken from the Naiman people decades ago. She's survived and thrived by understanding the system perfectly, and now she controls access to the Khan's inner household. She speaks to Turkan in Persian, then switches to Mongolian without warning, testing whether Turkan understands when she thinks she's not being evaluated. The conversation reveals the complexity of Turagan's position. She's simultaneously a former victim who's adapted successfully and an enforcer of the system that victimized her. She treats the captured women with neither cruelty nor kindness, just efficient evaluation. She asks about Turkan's education, her family's governance of Khwarezm, her language skills. She watches facial expressions carefully, reading truth beneath polite answers. After 3 hours of interviews, the senior wives have narrowed the 31 women to 12, who will be presented directly to Ogedei Khan. Turkan is among them. The others will be distributed among the households of generals, administrators, and important allies, still positions of relative privilege compared to common slavery, but not the imperial household itself. The presentation to Ogedei happens the following day in a smaller, more intimate setting. The Khan is 45 years old, showing the physical strain of managing an empire that spans half the known world. He sits with several trusted advisors, and the 12 women are brought before him one at a time, not in groups. This individual attention indicates their exceptional value. When Turkan enters, Ogedei studies her silently for a long moment. Then he speaks in Persian, startling her. "You are the daughter of the Khwarezm Sultan, who fled rather than defend his city." It's not a question. His intelligence network has provided detailed background on every high-value captive. Turkan nods, unsure whether denying it would be better or worse. "Your father's cowardice cost you everything," Ogedei continues. "But your language skills and education make you useful. You'll serve in the administration of conquered Persian territories. You'll translate documents, help govern people who speak your languages. You'll make my empire function more efficiently." He pauses, then adds almost as an afterthought, "And you'll bear children who will help rule those territories. Mixed blood makes better administrators in mixed lands." This is the breeding doctrine made explicit. Turkan isn't being selected for beauty or companionship. She's being selected as a tool of governance and demographic engineering. Her children will be Mongol in culture, but Persian in appearance and language ability, perfect for administering territories where local populations might resist pure Mongol rulers. Of the 12 women presented to Ogedei, he accepts 5 into his personal household. Turkan is one of them. The other 7 are assigned to specific generals and administrators, marriages that are essentially transfers of valuable property from the Khan to important subordinates, strengthening loyalty through gifts of exceptional women. The 5 women selected for Ogedei's household are moved to new quarters in the palace complex. These rooms are genuinely comfortable, private spaces with actual beds, quality food, servants who treat them with at least superficial respect. The improvement in physical conditions is dramatic, but the women understand this isn't freedom or even safety, it's just a different form of captivity, more gilded but no less absolute. Turkan's first night in the palace, she lies on a real bed for the first time since her capture 8 months ago. The comfort should be welcome, but instead it's disorienting. She's survived by maintaining psychological distance from her circumstances, but better conditions make that distance harder to maintain. When you're in obvious hell, you can hate it clearly. When hell becomes comfortable, the moral clarity blurs in ways that make survival more complex. Life in Ogedei Khan's household operates according to strict hierarchies that the new women must learn quickly. The household contains approximately 40 women at various levels: senior wives with decades of service, junior wives, concubines, servants, and the newly arrived captives who exist in an ambiguous category between valuable property and potential wives. Turgani explains the system to the 5 new women during their first week. The Khan has 4 principal wives, women who hold official status and wield real political power. Below them are secondary wives, perhaps a dozen women who have borne children or demonstrated exceptional usefulness. Then come concubines, who serve the Khan but haven't achieved wife status. At the bottom are women like Turkan, high-value captives whose futures depend on how they perform in coming months. The path to higher status is clear but difficult. Bear the Khan a son who survives to adulthood, and your position becomes secure. Demonstrated administrative or political skills that make you indispensable, and you gain power even without children. Remain merely decorative, and you'll eventually be given as a gift to some general or administrator when newer, younger women arrive. Turkan is assigned to work in the administrative section that handles Persian language correspondence. The Mongol Empire generates enormous paperwork, reports from conquered territories, requests for resources, disputes requiring imperial adjudication. Much of this comes from Persian-speaking regions, and Turkan's literacy makes her immediately useful. She works alongside 3 other educated captive women, one from Baghdad, one from Herat, one from Nishapur. They're all survivors of Mongol conquests, all chosen for their language skills and education. They translate documents, compose responses in Persian that Mongol officials have dictated in Mongolian, maintain records of imperial decisions affecting Persian territories. The work is mentally demanding, but provides privileges. Women doing administrative work have access to information, which means power in any bureaucratic system. They learn which regions are restive, which governors are effective, which policies are succeeding or failing. This knowledge becomes valuable currency in the household's complex social networks. But administrative work doesn't exempt them from other duties. Ogday summons Turkan to his private chambers on her 3rd week in the household. The summons is delivered by a servant who treats it as routine, which it is. This is how the system works. Women in the household exist for multiple purposes, and all those purposes are available to the Khan whenever he chooses. The encounter is neither violent nor tender. It's transactional, an exercise of ownership that requires no emotional content from either party. Ogday is efficient and impersonal. Turkan employs the dissociation techniques she learned during the long journey from Khwarezm. She's present physically, but absent mentally, treating what happens to her body as something happening to someone else. Afterwards, Ogday asks about her work translating Persian documents. He's genuinely interested in whether the administrative system is functioning efficiently. They have a 10-minute conversation about document flow and translation accuracy before he dismisses her. The casual shift from physical use to professional consultation captures perfectly how women in his household exist, simultaneously property, administrative tools, and potential companions, with shifts between these roles happening without transition or acknowledgement. Turkan returns to her quarters and finds the other women from the beauty line waiting. They've all experienced similar summons in their first weeks. No one discusses details. There's nothing to say that isn't obvious. Instead, they focus on practical information, which days Ogday typically issues summons, which behaviors seem to please or displease him, how to minimize the psychological damage of each encounter. The sharing of survival strategies becomes the foundation of bonds between the women. They can't prevent what happens to them, but they can help each other endure it. They teach each other meditation techniques, distraction methods, ways to separate mind from body. They warn each other about household politics, which senior wives are dangerous, which servants can be trusted, which officials might offer protection or represent threats. 3 months after entering Ogedai's household, Turkan realizes she's pregnant. The realization comes with complicated emotions: relief that pregnancy might bring improved status, horror that she's carrying the child of the man who destroyed her family, calculation about what this means for her future survival. Pregnancy in the Khan's household brings immediate changes. Pregnant women receive better food, reduced work duties, medical attention from the household's physicians. The Mongol leadership wants healthy children, and they invest resources in ensuring successful pregnancies. Turkan's diet improves dramatically. Meat at every meal, fresh milk, fruits preserved from distant regions. The contrast with her journey rations makes the improved conditions almost obscene. But pregnancy also means increased scrutiny. The household's senior wives watch pregnant women carefully, evaluating how they handle the physical changes, whether they seem pleased or resentful, how they interact with other household members. Women who show too much pride in their pregnancies threaten existing hierarchies. Women who show too little suggest they might harm the children, which the household won't tolerate. Turkan navigates this carefully, showing appropriate gratitude without suggesting she's achieved a status she hasn't earned. She continues her administrative work until her 6th month, when the physicians insist she rest more. She uses this time to strengthen relationships with other pregnant women in the household, building alliances that might protect her child after birth. The Mongol system is brutally clear about what pregnancy means. If Turkan bears a son, he becomes property of the Khan and the empire. He'll be raised by nurses and teachers chosen by Ogedai's senior wives, educated in Mongol culture, trained for military or administrative service. Turkan might see him occasionally, but he'll never be hers in any meaningful sense. If she bears a daughter, the child's future depends on her beauty and abilities. She might become a diplomatic gift, a wife to an important official, or a servant in the household. The other women in the household who've gone through this process before share their experiences. One woman, captured from northern China 10 years ago, has birthed 3 sons to Ugadai. She sees them perhaps twice a year during household celebrations, and they barely recognize her. They call her mother as a title, not a relationship. They've been raised as pure Mongol nobility, and their mixed heritage is visible only in their features. They think, speak, and act entirely Mongol. This future for her unborn child is what Turkan faces. She'll carry and birth a baby who will be taken and raised to serve the empire that enslaved her. The breeding doctrine isn't just about sex. It's about manufacturing the next generation of Mongol rulers from the bodies of conquered peoples. Each child represents genetic absorption of a conquered people, dilution of resistance, creation of mixed heritage administrators who can govern without apparent foreign imposition. As Turkan's pregnancy progresses, she develops a coping strategy that's ethically dubious but psychologically necessary. She tries not to think of the child as hers. She thinks of pregnancy as another administrative task, her body providing a service to the household just as her language skills do. The baby is a project she's completing, not a relationship she's forming. This emotional disconnection is cruel, but the alternative, loving a child who will be taken away, seems unbearable. The other pregnant women understand this strategy because most of them employ similar psychological defenses. They form a strange support group of women trying not to attach to their own pregnancies. They help each other maintain the emotional distance that makes survival possible in a system designed to weaponize motherhood. Turkan gives birth on a cold March morning after 18 hours of labor. The delivery happens in special chambers designated for household births, attended by experienced midwives who've delivered hundreds of children for various wives and concubines. The pain is extraordinary, but the midwives are efficient. They've done this too many times to be anything else. The baby is a boy, healthy, strong lungs, good size. The midwives clean him and wrap him in silk, a privilege indicating his status as the Khan's son. They place him in Turkan's arms for perhaps 10 minutes, allowing the minimum bonding time that health traditions require. Then a senior wife enters the room, takes the baby, and disappears with him. This moment, the taking of her newborn, breaks something in Turkan that all the previous suffering hadn't quite destroyed. The rape, the slavery, the forced breeding, all of that she'd survived through psychological distance. But watching her child be carried away minutes after birth creates a wound that dissociation can't prevent. She realizes she'd failed in her strategy of emotional disconnection. Despite her best efforts, she'd started to hope. The postpartum period is medically supervised, but emotionally isolating. Turkan's body recovers from the birth under the care of physicians who ensure she'll be able to bear additional children. She's proven fertile, which increases her value, but no one addresses her emotional state except to warn that depression or grief might harm her future reproductive capacity. She's allowed to see her son once during the first month, a formal presentation where she's brought to the nursery and permitted to observe him being fed and cared for by designated nurses. He's thriving, gaining weight, healthy color, strong responses. The nurses treat him with professional competence, but not affection. He's valuable property, requiring proper maintenance. During this visit, Turi Gaini explains what will happen to the boy. He'll be named Rashid, a Persian name, acknowledging his maternal heritage in ways that serve Mongol political purposes. He'll be raised bilingually in Mongolian and Persian, educated in both Mongol military traditions and Persian administrative practices. At age 15, he'll be assigned to govern some territory in Persia, where his mixed heritage makes him acceptable to local populations, while his Mongol training ensures loyalty to the empire. This is the breeding doctrine in action. Rashid will help the Mongols govern Persia more effectively than a pure Mongol could. His existence makes resistance more complicated for Persians. How do you resist a ruler who looks like you, speaks your language, but implements Mongol policy? The child Turkan carried and birthed has become a tool for subjugating her own people. After the first month, Turkan is returned to administrative work. Her body has recovered enough for full duties, and the household operates on productivity expectations. She resumes translating documents, working alongside the other educated captive women who've also experienced the breeding system. They don't discuss their children much. The pain is too immediate, but the shared experience creates bonds deeper than friendship. 3 months postpartum, Ogedei summons Turkan again. The cycle continues. She's proven fertile, which means she'll be expected to produce additional children. The Mongol system values women who can birth multiple healthy sons, and Turkan has demonstrated this capacity. She understands with sickening clarity that her reproductive future is planned. Multiple pregnancies, multiple children taken, multiple contributions to the demographic conquest of her homeland. As years pass in Ogedei's household, Turkan discovers that administrative work provides forms of power that partially compensate for her lack of personal freedom. She becomes increasingly skilled at translating not just words, but political nuance, helping Mongol officials understand the cultural context behind Persian communications. This skill makes her indispensable in ways that transcend her reproductive value. She's now 28 years old. She's birthed 3 sons to Ogedei, each taken and raised separately as future administrators of Persian territories. She's lost contact with her family, has no idea if any of them survived the destruction of Khwarezm. She exists in a strange limbo of being simultaneously powerless and influential, slave and advisor, property and political actor. The administrative section where she works has evolved into an informal power center within the household. The educated captive women who staff it have become experts in managing correspondence between the Mongol leadership and conquered territories. They don't just translate, they effectively interpret policy, suggest language that will gain better compliance, identify potential problems in proposed administrative changes. Mongol officials increasingly consult with these women about governance challenges in Persian territories. The officials recognize, even if they don't acknowledge openly, that the women understand cultural dynamics that Mongol administrators miss. When a policy generates unexpected resistance in Persian regions, officials ask the translation staff why. When proposed tribute systems seem likely to provoke rebellion, the women quietly suggest modifications that achieve the same economic goals with less political cost. Turkan discovers she has informal influence over how harshly conquered Persian cities are treated. When Ogedei reviews reports about rebellions or resistance, he sometimes asks her opinion about appropriate responses. She learns to advocate for proportional rather than excessive punishment, not for mercy, but by framing her advice in terms Mongols understand. Excessive violence destroys the productivity that makes territories valuable. She successfully argues against destroying Nishapur after a minor uprising, pointing out that the city's skilled artisans and agricultural output matter more than revenge. She helps design a tribute system for Herat that extracts maximum resources while preventing the economic collapse that would reduce future tribute potential. She's not saving her people, she's helping exploit them more efficiently, but efficient exploitation preserves more lives than vengeful destruction. This creates profound moral ambiguity. Turkan collaborates with the system that enslaved her, helping it function more smoothly. She tells herself she's minimizing damage, saving lives where possible, preserving some fragments of Persian culture, even as it's being absorbed into Mongol administration. But she knows she's also legitimizing and strengthening Mongol control over her homeland. The other women in the administrative section wrestle with similar ethical conflicts. They're simultaneously victims of the Mongol system and enablers of it. Their skills make conquest more manageable, reducing resistance by making Mongol rule less unbearable. They're trapped between collaboration that saves lives and resistance that would destroy them while achieving nothing. One evening, Turkan and three other Persian women have a rare private conversation about these moral complexities. They discuss whether they're traitors to their peoples for helping administer the conquest. One woman argues they're saving lives by making the system less brutal. Another counters that they're preventing the kind of catastrophic violence that might inspire effective rebellion. A third suggests that survival itself is resistance, maintaining Persian knowledge and culture, even in service of conquest, means something might survive to re-emerge later. They reach no conclusions because there are no good answers. They're making impossible choices in circumstances they didn't create and can't control. The best they can do is survive, minimize damage where possible, and preserve something of their identities, even as they help destroy their own civilizations. 30 years after her capture at Khwarezm, Turkan is 54 years old. She's outlived Ogedei and now serves in the household of his son Guyuk. She's birthed 7 children total, 5 sons, 2 daughters. All have been taken and raised as Mongols, placed in positions governing Persian territories. None of them know her as anything more than the biological source of half their heritage. The breeding doctrine has worked exactly as designed. Turkan's children look Persian, but think Mongolian. They speak Persian fluently, but their first language is Mongolian. They govern Persian populations with efficiency that pure Mongol administrators couldn't achieve. They understand cultural nuances from their maternal heritage while maintaining Mongol political loyalty from their education and upbringing. Modern genetic studies reveal the scope of what the Mongols achieved through systematic breeding programs. DNA analysis of populations across Central Asia, Persia, and even parts of China shows dramatic genetic markers consistent with large-scale admixture between Mongol males and local females during the period of Mongol expansion. Approximately 8% of males in the former Mongol Empire carry Y chromosome lineages tracing back to the Mongol period, representing roughly 16 million men carrying genetic heritage from systematic breeding programs like the one Turkan experienced. These statistics represent millions of women like Turkan, captured, bred, separated from their children, used as tools of demographic and cultural conquest. The genetic legacy persists in living populations. 800 years later, every person of Central Asian descent carries some trace of this massive forced mixing, this systematic absorption of conquered peoples through the bodies of captured women. Turkan never sees most of her adult children. One son, Rashid, now 29 years old and governing a province in eastern Persia, visits the imperial household once. He requests meeting her out of curiosity about his maternal heritage. The meeting is awkward. They share no language of affection, no history of relationship. He's polite, but distant, treating her like a historical curiosity rather than his mother. During their brief conversation, Rashid mentions that he's married to a Persian noblewoman, part of continuing the breeding doctrine into the next generation. His children will be 3/4 Persian genetically, but entirely Mongol culturally. This dilution continues across generations until the Mongol genetic contribution becomes invisible, while the cultural conquest remains complete. Turkan realizes, with a clarity that comes only with age, that she participated in the destruction of her own civilization. Every child she bore became another tool of Persian subjugation. Her genetics combined with Mongol culture created the perfect administrators for continuing the conquest indefinitely. Her body wasn't just exploited, it was weaponized. In her 50s, Turkan is considered elderly by medieval standards. She's survived far longer than most captured women. Many died during the initial capture and transport. More died during their prime reproductive years from childbirth complications or disease. Few reach old age. Her survival is partly luck, partly her valuable skills, partly her successful pregnancies that kept her status high enough to receive decent care. She spends her final years training younger captive women in the administrative systems, teaching them how to navigate the household politics, how to translate documents effectively, how to survive psychologically in a system designed to destroy identity. She's become what the trainer who first taught her survival skills was, a former victim who helps perpetuate the system by making it more efficient. The cycle continues. New conquered cities provide new women. New selections happen. New pregnancies produce new mixed heritage administrators. The breeding doctrine operates with machine efficiency, turning women's bodies into tools of imperial expansion generation after generation. Turkan's personal story ends, but the system she was part of continues long after her death. Turkan dies in 1251, age 55, having survived 31 years in the Mongol system. She's buried without significant ceremony in a cemetery for household servants. No monument, no marker beyond a simple wooden post that rots away within years. History records nothing about her except a possible mention in administrative documents as Persian woman #247, mother of administrators Rashid Mahmud, and 3 others, useful in translation work. Her story, imagined here but representative of countless real women, illustrates how the Mongol Empire systematically exploited captured women as tools of conquest. The Mongols didn't just defeat armies, they absorbed entire civilizations by breeding with conquered women, creating mixed generations who looked like the defeated but served the conquerors. The estimated numbers are staggering. During the 13th and 14th centuries, Mongol campaigns across Eurasia resulted in the capture and forced breeding of between 500,000 to 2 million women. Most remained nameless, their individual stories lost to history, but their genetic and demographic impact shaped entire regions that remain visible in modern DNA analysis. Modern populations across Central Asia, Persia, and parts of China carry genetic markers from this period of systematic forced admixture. The Mongol Y chromosome lineage appears in approximately 8% of males in formerly Mongol-controlled territories, evidence of breeding programs operating at massive scale across multiple generations. What makes the Mongol system particularly horrifying wasn't its uniqueness. Many conquerors throughout history have exploited women. It was its systematic efficiency and explicit strategic purpose. The Mongols deliberately used captured women as tools of demographic conquest, turning reproduction into a weapon that operated across generations. History celebrates the Mongol Empire's military achievements, its trade networks, its administrative innovations. Museums display Mongol artifacts and maps showing territorial expansion, but the stories of women like Turkan remain largely untold. Footnotes to conquest narratives, statistics in demographic studies, genetic evidence in modern DNA databases, yet they deserve recognition, not as nameless victims, but as individuals who faced systematic exploitation with whatever courage and survival skills they could muster. They were mothers whose children were taken, administrators who helped govern territories while enslaved, survivors who maintained fragments of identity despite systematic erasure. The ruins of Khwarezm still exist in modern Uzbekistan, tourist sites where visitors photograph ancient walls and imagine medieval glory. Few markers acknowledge the thousands of women captured there in 1220, separated from families, transported thousands of miles, bred to produce the next generation of Mongol administrators. Their suffering built the empire as surely as military victories did. If this journey into the systematic horror of Mongol conquest has shown you how women's bodies became weapons of empire building, I've prepared another buried chapter of history that you won't want to miss. Click the video appearing on your screen now to discover another civilization that weaponized female captivity. And if you found this exploration as compelling as I did, subscribe so we can continue revealing the voices history tried to silence. These stories deserve to be told, and there are so many more waiting to be heard.